Okay, so very good morning to members of the Audit and Governance Committee. I think we're now live streaming the session, so and the cameras will be able to follow people when they're speaking. So we're not expecting any fire alarms or this morning, and please, when you're speaking, do use your microphone to take us through the session. So this is the inaugural meeting of the Audit and Governance Committee of the Devon and Torbay Combined County Authority. My name is Sean Anstey. I'm the Director of Operations for the CCA, and I'll take us through the first two items, which, given this is our inaugural meeting, is to elect a chair for the meeting, and then secondly to do nominations for chair and vice chair of the Audit and Governance Committee. So I'm going to start with electing a chair for the meeting. Can I ask whether there's any nominations, please? Councillor Connett.
If I may propose Councillor Paul Hayward to chair the meeting, please.
Thank you very much. And seconded?
Very happy to second that, Chair. Well, not Chair, but soon to be Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brooks. So, Councillor Hayward, with your consent, so that you're chair for the meeting, and if it's okay with you, I'll move us on to item 2. So item 2 is for nominations of chair and vice chair of the Audit and Governance Committee. And the distinction between this and the previous item is that the confirmation of the permanent chair and vice chair of the committee needs to be a recommendation to the CCA board, which it will be on the 28th of July when the CCA board next meets. So again, can I ask for a nomination, please, for chair? Councillor Connett.
Thank you. I'd like to propose Councillor Paul Hayward as our nomination for chair and Councillor Ed Hill as our nomination for vice chair.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Keeling?
Happy to second that.
Thank you very much, members, and Councillor Hayward, I'll hand the chair over to you.
Thank you very much indeed. We now move to item number 3, welcome and introductions. Again, welcome from me as your newly elected chair. In terms of introductions, would it be helpful to go around the room and ask each member present to say who you are and who you represent? I think that would be a good start. Thank you. If I can start with Amanda, and to my left.
So good morning all. My name is Amanda Barlow. I'm the Head of Legal Services and the Monitoring Officer for Torbay Council, and I'm also the Monitoring Officer for the CCA.
Good morning, I'm Michael Carr. I'm the Governance and Scrutiny Officer for the CCA.
Good morning, my name's Ewan Wigley and I'm an independent member.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Councillor Martin Brooke, Councillor on Torbay Authority. I represent Colleton St Mary. Thank you.
Morning all, Andrew Ledbetter from Devon County Council.
Good morning, Councillor Richard Keeling, Leader at Tingbridge District Council.
Good morning, Ken James. I'm the Leader of Torridge District Council.
Good morning, Councillor Mike Fox from Torbay Council.
And good morning as well, Nigel Penny, also Torbay Council. Thank you.
Good morning, Councillor Sally Morgan from Devon County Council.
Good morning, Councillor Edward Hill from Devon County Council.
Anna Tolchard from Torbay Council. Thank you.
It's Councillor Alan Connett. I serve the Exminster and Holden Division on Devon County Council.
And over the back here, Richard Plum, independent member.
Good morning, Matthew Thorpe, Deputy Director of Finance and Public Value at Devon County Council and Chief Finance Officer for the CCA.
And members, as introduced, Sean Anstey, Director of Operations at the CCA.
Thank you all very much. I'm Councillor Paul Hayward from Axminster, member of Devon County Council and also East Devon District Council. Thank you all very much indeed for that. So we now move to item number 4, apologies for absence. Have we received any apologies?
We have apologies from Councillor Hazel Foster.
Thank you very much. If those can be recorded in the minutes. Item 5, declarations of interest. Amanda, do we do this by roll call or just with a show of hands?
So it's for each independent member themselves to nominate whether or not they have an interest that requires to be registered and that they need to declare it now, and also at the beginning of every item to which it has effect. Thank you.
Thank you. So if I can ask any members individually to state any declarations they wish to make at this point and note the advice from the monitoring officer. Thank you.
In that case, for clarity and transparency, I'm also chair of the Devon County Council Audit Committee. Thank you.
Sorry, I chair Teambridge Audit Committee and Dartmoor National Park Audit and Governance.
In which case I'll join the queue. Torbay, honoured to be chair of the Audit Committee.
Chair, just to say that I am also a Devon County Councillor.
I'm also the Vice Chair of the Audit Committee at Torbay Council.
So whilst it's helpful...
I'm the Chair of the Corporate Infrastructure and Scrutiny Committee on Devon County Council, or whatever that's called. I've forgotten the name.
So, Chair, whilst it's really helpful to know all those that are chairpersons, vice chairpersons and members of, it just demonstrates the wealth of experience and knowledge before this committee this morning. But thank you for noting.
And of course, the onus is on members. If you see something on here that you think you may have an interest, it's just the public perception. It's best to declare and then find yourself not needing to than not to. Thank you very much indeed, members. We now move to agenda item 6, membership terms of reference, pages 1 to 8 of your agenda pack. And we're asked to note the membership and terms of reference. Do you want to speak on that, Sean?
Yeah, so thank you, Chair. Just to set out for members that the report sets out the formal membership of the Audit and Governance Committee. It's inviting the committee to adopt the terms of reference. Those are terms of reference that have been taken from the CCA's constitution. As a statutory committee of the CCA, your role is to provide independent oversight of financial management, governance and risk assurance. The report sets out that membership reflects the balanced representation from Devon County Council and Torbay Council, including the nominations from the Devon Districts Forum and the 2 independent persons has introduced. Members of the CCA board are not eligible to serve on the committee. Make sure that there's independence from executive decision making of the CCA. In terms of reference, set out your responsibilities and provide the framework on how the committee is intended to work going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Are all members happy with that explanation? Again, we're only being asked to note, so unless there's any dissent, I'll take that we've noted the terms of reference and the membership. Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item 7, the annual audit and assurance plan, pages 9 to 24, and this is going to be presented by Tony Rose, head of the Devon Assurance Partnership. Over to you, Tony.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon, members. For those that don't know me, Tony Rose, head of Devon Assurance Partnership. I think I've probably met most people in one way, shape or form, either via training or another audit committee regionally. Good to see you all. So a fairly quick introduction on this one, really, but a few key points to note for members, if I may. As alluded to, in the way that we work, we are a shared service partnership, and I think it's important to note that the Devon and Torbay Combined County Authority are a partner in Devon Assurance Partnership now. So that means that there is that ability to influence how we work as a partnership, which is a very good thing. We also have been working over recent years to improve the way we deliver assurance to audit committees in partners where we can, by bringing together not just the internal audit activity but the risk management and the counter-fraud activity. Integrated assurance, combined assurance, many phrases, but in essence trying to make sure that we're leaning on the skills and the knowledge of those within our team to really maximise the work that we undertake. And from this perspective, actually, there's a little bit of groundbreaking work in that whilst this is an annual internal audit plan, which is required under various regulations, we've called it an assurance plan as well, because we are bringing those together formally, bringing together, if you like, one report which describes the internal audit work, the risk management work and the counter-fraud work. And ideally going forward, you'll see that in the same way, so you can see those links across. The plan itself it's a fairly standard template document and allows us to comply with various internal audit and other regulations, hence various appendices. But the first thing to note really, and the key point, if you like, is your large page 16, where we've got a table that says high level summary audit plan. For those that have seen our documents before, normally we'd have various headings and colours and other bits in here, but with the CCA being fairly new, we're still working through what the detailed work might be during the year. But ultimately, the initial focus as agreed by the board and others is going to be around that initial CCA creation, the governance and advice on that perspective. And then ultimately, as operations begin and activities are taken up by the CCA, we'll be coming back each time to update on the work that we might be doing in that area. Might well be things like grant certifications or specific processes to give comfort to the committee. Risk management, there's a later item, so I'm not going to say too much on that because I'll steal Brad's thunder, who sat behind me. And for those that know me, I tend to have a habit of doing that. So we're going to be making sure that we're supporting the CCA in that risk management work and activity and bringing you updates. And counter fraud, again, a really big area. The public sector is a massive, massive target. You know, over 40% of reported fraud in the UK, crime, sorry, is fraud. And as a body that's going to be administering large amounts of money, it will be a target, as are other local authorities. So we'll be making sure that we're bringing in not just the proactive side of advice, but any investigative work should that be needed, and also cross-referencing key risk areas to the audit work itself. There are other things we do, as noted in the table, i.e. Presenting these updates to committee and so on, but ultimately the plan presented to the committee is a combined assurance plan. It will change in year, and at this point next year, or maybe perhaps a little bit earlier, you'll see something that you might more traditionally see from us with some very specific lines through the planning process. And we do have, which we will share over time, a refined process to include the audit committee in that planning activity as well. Some may have picked that up from Devon and Torbay and elsewhere. So from my perspective, item 7 is presentation of that. There are various appendices which I won't go through each one, but they're all there for a purpose and a reason, as I've read through. The one I would note is on page 21, which is roughly the timetable, and it starts to talk through some of the activities that I've just mentioned around not just reporting for this year, but the planning that would come into place for next year. Also at the bottom of that page is a small table with various people noted in that. There's quite a few. But ultimately that represents the fact that the CCA is that breadth of engagement. So you've got myself, my deputy, Brad sat behind me as alluded to, and also the audit leads for Torbay and for Devon in that, which are Linda Sharp-Woods, some may know from Torbay, and Hannah Hillier, some may know from Devon. There are other bits I'm happy to take questions on, but ultimately those are the points I'd like to note for members, if I could, please.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Connor.
Thank you. Can I just clarify with Officer, I'm looking at the right report. So, sorry if this sounds a bit dim, but it's item 7, which is the annual audit and assurance plan. And Officer, during his commentary, talked about a number of appendices and talked about page 21. But what I'm looking at online is one appendices, which has 10 pages. Do you have something I've not seen?
No, Councillor Connor, if you, I think the consolidated pack, when the papers are put through ModGov, which is the system we use to publish the papers, puts page numbers onto them, which I think is the page numbers that Tony will have been referring to. There is only one appendix to this item, so you'll be looking at the assurance plan report as you've referred to. That is correct.
Which is 10 pages. In which case comes the real question, which is, having just clarified, because when someone talks about appendices and pages, you begin to think if you're just missing it. In the chart, which is on my page 8, which is the audit team and audit delivery cycle, there's a to be confirmed, TBC, internal audit governance arrangements reviewed by audit committee in line with new GIS. Do we now have a timeline for, as in can we remove a TBC? Is there a date line to go in for that?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. The short answer is no. The longer answer is that the new global internal audit standards, Councillor may be aware, came into effect for the public sector on the 1st of April. With each of our partners, we need to work through some specific aspects of that around the role of the audit committee, the role of the authority itself. And ultimately that needs to be agreed, so it's something that I need to talk to officers about and then also line up with the committee themselves. But there are questions, if you like, and presentations that I need to make, so the timing has not been agreed, is the slightly longer answer, but it will be hopefully by the next meeting.
Thank you very much indeed.
I just ask, I mean, I'm aware that local government audit is unwieldy to start off with, and now we've got this very large layer of multiple local government agencies. Is this fairly new territory for the audit system?
Thank you, Chair. In respect of the global internal audit standards, this is a revision to what used to be called the public sector internal audit standards. So there are new aspects in that place different asks, if you like, onto bodies and entities. I think the other aspects to this around local audit bodies, etc., there's probably not too much to say on that. I think those are still conversations that are ongoing, ultimately, and the impact they may have. But in respect of global internal audit standards, they are designed to be applicable everywhere. So they can be perhaps in some places where there is very good governance, mildly over prescriptive, but ultimately I think that's about the assessments that come to make sure that myself and others are compliant and whether we're doing that in the right and sensible way.
Just following on from the Councillor's question, Councillor Morgan's question, does that mean that what we're into now is completely new territory? I'm not quite sure I've fully understood your answer on this. Are we going into uncharted waters, or are we basically just putting a few layers on? How comfortable are we that this is something which we can bed down quickly?
May again, Chair. The derivative for these is the accounts and audit regulations. So there is a requirement to be in adherence with various aspects of this. It will add extra aspects or layers, if you like, in one way or another, but I don't anticipate that they will be overly onerous at all. And from my perspective, given that we deliver across lots of local bodies across the area, it is in our interest to make sure that's as efficient and effective as possible. Time and resource are at a minimum, so ultimately a practical approach that might pick up one or two aspects or conversations with committees, with chairs and others is probably the route we'd go down, rather than lots and lots of formal aspects of extra layers of governance around internal audit activity.
Just one thing that might help that sort of debate is obviously your experience of working across the environment that we're in. You'll be able to place reliance on the work in other local authorities that have the shared systems for the CCA, which you'll then use to inform your opinion. So you won't be doing it twice, is the thing, isn't it?
And I think for our colleagues, for a bit of reassurance here, since that's what we're all about, is reassurance, this framework is very similar to what we do at Torbay Council and in our work with DAP, for example. So I don't see anything blindingly unusual here, which is a relief, because you don't want to reinvent a wheel. That wheel's functioning quite well. Thank you.
Just one small break. Could I possibly ask members, because I didn't bring my reading glasses, long distance glasses, because I didn't think it was necessary, may I borrow yours? If you could just tilt, if it's possible, your name badges sort of towards me slightly, and then I won't just be sort of waving wildly at you. That would be really helpful, and I'll try my best, but please bear with me. I suppose from my perspective, Tony, it's that members can feel confident that if they do, because there are members here who are newish to auditing, that they can have the assurance that they can speak to you, that they can email the officers here, and that in the initial stages no question is too daft, because often there's a reticence, I know, amongst councillors not to ask because they don't want to appear foolish or that they haven't read, but it's quite a complicated issue, so that assurance will be comforting. I suppose from the chair's perspective for assurance for members is, if members have any queries about the documents that you present to us, in the first instance referred to you, what would be the protocol if, and I hope this will never happen, that members don't have faith in the DAP? I hope that would never be the case, because you're performing a professional role. What's their recourse then? We don't, obviously no member wants to cause a kerfuffle for the sake of argument, but they may have genuine questions and concerns. What's the protocol?
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, first point, definitely happy to take questions that expand, and definitely there's no such thing as that stupid question, as it were. Please do ask them. In the respect of the concerns of DAP as an entity, there are two aspects, really. The first one I would say is that as a partner, the chair, if you like, of the CCA Audit Committee will sit on the DAP committee, if you like, and that body is that governance level. So we have our operational side of things. We have a management board, which is Matthew, or the section 151, section 73 equivalent oversight, and then we have a committee above that which approves the budget and various other aspects. So if we really did get to a stage where we weren't able to talk or resolve things, that would be a route through there, if you like, to come through and feed things back in. Alternatively, I would, it might well be that there's a conversation for someone to have with Sean and Matthew. They would talk to myself as well. But there is a governance structure for us that would allow the CCA to have a voice in a forum if it needed to, in that respect.
The only reason I ask is nationally there is an awful lot of current press coverage about councils, and you've covered it kindly in your introduction about why this committee is so important. We are dealing with huge volumes of public money, and we just need to be beyond reproach. It's great that we have counter fraud measures. I hope the diligence and the measure of what we do here would make that not necessary. We have professional officers and we have mechanisms to stop it. But that's why we're here, is to help. The final thing is, for members who aren't perhaps completely au fait, is there anything from the likes of SIPFA or etc., or even yourself, a glossary of terms? I only refer to this because in my own professional role, whenever I get a new cohort of councillors to work with, the first thing I give them, other than their registry of interest form, is a glossary, because just like being a school governor or anything else, we all work on acronyms and shortened versions of things, and it can be a little overwhelming for new members. So if there's anything available that you could send to members of this committee, whether it's an external glossary or anything at all, I think it would just be helpful so that they can surreptitiously look down through this list and think, I know exactly what GIAS, without, sitting there for the rest of the meeting, oblivious to it. Thank you.
Could I just ask, have we got clarification yet that, I know the CCA started just before a new financial year. Have we got clarification yet that we're just doing a slightly extended 1 year? Has that come through?
Yes, it has. Hot off the press last week, we got confirmation from MHCLG that the appropriate legislation has now been endorsed, and we have that extended reporting period just shy of 14 months for the first financial year.
Thank you for that. Are there any other questions on this item? The recommendation here is that we consider it. Do we are required to vote on that, or just consider it? Oh.
So, Councillor Hayward, the recommendation is that the members of the committee approve the proposed assurance plan.
Thank you. So in that case then, is someone prepared to or willing to propose that recommendation? Councillor Brooke, and seconded, my apologies, I'm going to have to bring my glass out. Thank you. So we have a proposer and a seconder. All members in favour of approval? I believe that's unanimous. Thank you very much. So we now move to item 8, the Internal Audit Charter and Strategy, pages 25 to 36 of your agenda pack, again to be presented by Mr. Rose. Just a point raised by Councillor Connett. Just while we sort of get used to the way that the documents are formatted, when we refer to a page in the report, could you also just name the report as well, the title of it, just so that if members, I think you did earlier anyway, but just if all members, if you refer to a page, just because within this report, as you quite can see, there's individual document numbers, modern gov numbers, and a title. And I think for all of us just to stay sort of ahead of the game, that would be really handy. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, the Internal Audit Charter and Strategy, this is a document that, again, is one of those requirements. Some may be familiar with this kind of thing with other audit committees. Just for context, and as mentioned, those global internal audit standards have changed the way that this document needs to be presented and formatted, and some of the information that goes within it in some ways. So normally these would be agreed prior to financial year, but timing-wise, we're bringing this now, which is fine. This is in the new recommended format from the Institute of Internal Auditors. So the structure of the document itself is very much what I would expect to see in various areas. The purpose of it fundamentally is to set out the roles and responsibilities of internal audit, how we go about what we do, the reasoning for that, the authority for that, and then the expectations of the audit committee and others involved in that. So it talks about things like independence, our mandate, and then audit committee oversight as well, with quite a few bullet points there. But it is essentially if I term it as a standard document which sets out the remit for us to operate in against the backdrop of the account and audit regulations and the requirements within that, and any other large standards. So it will talk about developing a risk-based audit plan and assurance plan, which we briefly just had a conversation on, and give you some kind of indication as well as to what you should expect from me as the head of audit when bringing information to you. There are quite a few pages in that one, but as I say, that talks about communication in other areas. I don't necessarily want to go into detail because there is a lot of information, but ultimately this sets out what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, and everybody's expectations around roles and responsibilities. And you will see this again in roughly 12 months' time with any updates that we might put in there. And there is a requirement, if you like, for that to be agreed as well, because it underpins effectively the work that we do. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. That, again, there's a lot to take in on this document at first glance. Members, the recommendation is that the Audit and Governance Committee approves the proposed Devon and Torbay Combined County Authority Internal Audit Charter and Strategy. Before we move to that recommendation, are there any questions from members of the committee? Anything you want clarity on? Oh, was that Andrew? Was that a question from you? Oh, no. Just a stretch. Okay, well, I can't see any. That's a positive. So in that case then, members, do we have a proposer and a seconder to move forward on this? Councillor Tolshard, proposal. Seconder from Councillor Hill. All members in favour, please. And that's NEMCON. Are you against, Councillor Hill, or are you oh, sorry, you are as well. Sorry. Okay, so that is clearly carried as well. Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to have to find a different way to do this. We now move to item number 9, the Risk Management Policy and Strategy 2025-2030, pages 37 to 50 of your pack. This is to consider the Risk Management Policy and Strategy. Again, Tony, you're... oh. Apologies. Over to you, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. My name is Brad Hutton. I'm Senior Assurance Manager at Devon Assurance Partnership. Thank you, Chair. So I work alongside Tony. Tony mentioned a number of times that that integrated assurance picture, risk and risk management being a key fundamental part of that. I guess I head up that for DAP, and very pleased to be here this morning. So essentially we are looking at page 37 today here, members, where we are presenting the Devon and Torbay Combined County Authority Risk Management Policy and Strategy, and asking members to approve this policy. The copy of the policy is on page 41. I'm not going to go through this word for word, but I will cover the key points. I guess what's just worth noting before I go into some of the key points is that we've developed this policy alongside some key officers. So to Sean, Wendy and Michael have had the opportunity to feed into this document. And whilst it follows a set points, I guess, that run through this policy that are recommended by UK government, it is tailored to the CCA. So we've used, as you'll see throughout the policy, a number of its the Combined County Authority's key functions and objectives to focus on that. So if I just start at the introduction here, I'm just going to pull out a couple of key focus points here, and about halfway down page 43 of your packs here is the definition of risk. and a short definition is the effect of uncertainty on objectives. And I guess the key word there is objectives. We look at what the combined county authority is trying to achieve, trying to deliver, and that, whilst we say objectives there, that may be a goal, a target, or just a service it needs to deliver. And essentially, we're looking at potential events that could hinder the ability to achieve those objectives. Therein lies the definition of risk. Those are risks. And I guess then just below that, we then look at risk management as a process to identify, to assess, to manage and to control those events to an acceptable level, thus increasing the opportunity of achievement of those objectives. So it's all about being more successful, increasing your chances, increasing that likelihood of success against those goals, objectives, or indeed just service delivery. So as I say, it follows kind of key points that UK government recommends that these sorts of policies cover. I will just draw members' attention to page 46, I think there, where you'll see a colourful sort of scoring guide on the right-hand side there. Essentially, this is that assess part of that risk there. And we use two different axes to look at risk. And again, very, very common that these are used. And we use likelihood and impact. So the likelihood of that risk occurring against the ability to achieve objectives, and if that potential event did occur, the impact it would cause, the ripple effect it would cause on the ability to achieve objectives. And what that does is it essentially plots that, and of course, being a high risk, say it plotted as a high risk, would push us as an authority to manage that risk closer, direct more resource, whether that's staff, finance, etc., to manage that risk. And of course, if that's risk lower, what that does is it says, okay, well, we can tolerate that risk, but let's monitor it as time goes on. If I draw members' attention just to the bottom of page 47, we also define what the combined county authority's risk appetite is. So essentially, the definition of risk appetite is the amount of risk we're willing to take in order to meet our objectives. And this is really, really important. It's a crucial part of risk management. The reason and the rationale why we put that appetite statement in there, which is just at the bottom of that page there, you can see in bold, is to clearly define how the authority sees risk appetite. That's really important because what it does, it takes away that ambiguity, takes away that inconsistency, and rather than sit and allow an individual's outlook on risk to be sort of as a default, we have that authority definition there. And what that does is it helps those decisions being made. It's a line in the sand so that those decisions, those key decisions to achieve objectives, are done so in a secure and robust way. Chair, you mentioned just a short glossary of terms there. There is a very short glossary just to definition behind scorings, what risk appetite means, etc., etc. But we can always develop that a little bit further if needs be. And there's just one more just to draw your eyes to is roles and responsibilities, just towards the bottom of page 48 there. I guess everyone has a role to play in risk and risk management, whether that's identifying, controlling or managing. Members too. So, essentially, members, you are here to scrutinise and understand what the risks are to the authority in achieving its objectives, provide a bit of challenge and oversight to how the authority is managing those, and of course, help in the identification of those risks as well. If through your endeavours as members or indeed in your personal lives, do see actually this could impact us in some way, shape or form, then there's a route for you to bring that to the table. I'll just finish just with two key words. This is to provide, I think, reassurance to you as members that risks are being identified. And the second word is confidence that risks are being managed to an acceptable level. So yes, we know where the risks are, but it's that next step. It's doing something about them, essentially. That's it from me, Chair, but of course, happy to take any questions that may be.
Thank you very much indeed, Brad. Councillor Hill.
Yeah, going on to the how you define a risk, it says the effect of uncertainty on objectives. The effect can be positive or negative. But when you're defining a risk, surely the risk refers to something that's negative. So can you just explain to me how the effect of something that's risky could be positive?
It's a very good question. I guess the flip side of risk management is opportunity management. So it may well be that there's a potential. So let's take technology for an example. Of course, represents fundamental risks to the authority, both in terms of data or in terms of loss of revenue, fraud. Tony's mentioned there, but there's a flip side to that. There's an opportunity that if we embrace technology, could well move us forward. So there's I guess this will come probably in time as we start to develop and embed what good risk management looks like. There's also the flip side of that. So it's how we embrace sometimes risk, not sitting on our hands and sort of letting it pass us by, but actually we could say, well, actually it's worth taking a small risk to start to move forward and take advantage of an opportunity.
Thank you, Chair. How far along the curve are you already in identifying the risks that there's a working strategy right now in place that has already done which is red, which is amber, and which is green? Thank you.
Very good question. I would say that's next steps. So what we have here is the foundations to start to identify and assess. But I guess what it starts with is what we're trying to achieve. And been on a couple of calls with Sean and the team already as to actually these are the kind of key areas that we wanted to develop, and these are what we're responsible for. It's then kind of holding it up, okay, what's happening right now that could stop us from achieving that? And if it did happen, what would be the impact? So I guess the answer to your question is that's next. This is kind of the foundation, and then it comes it's the next stage essentially.
Thank you. I'm actually quite surprised at that. We are months now into this, but hopefully with our next committee meeting we will see a registers already up and running. Thank you.
Councillor Buck, the point is noted. I mean, in relation to establishing the governance arrangements for the CCA, that commenced with the CCA board adopting the constitution and assurance framework for the CCA, which also includes a number of the policies around fraud, anti-bribery, corruption, and so on. So we're working through as quickly as we possibly can the maturity of the governance arrangements, including the risk management profile, as Brad has just alluded to, and we'll make sure that we bring back further information in the next committee as you've requested.
Just for clarity, what was the actual start date of the committee?
The CCA was established on the 5th of February this year.
5th of February this year, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So I appreciate a lot of this is about putting in place. Have they gone? Okay. A lot of this is putting in place the necessary framework, the architecture around risk and governance. But for me, especially, and maybe for other colleagues, sometimes it's learning from what others have done and some of the mistakes that others have made on the basis of that we can learn by looking again. So the example I want to use is there's a local authority, it doesn't matter which one, but there's a local authority in the United Kingdom which has borrowed a lot of money to invest in solar farms. However, the supplier went out of business and the council's left with a large debt it needs to pay. I don't concern myself with the debt or the going out of business, but I just wanted to reflect on that in terms of us as an audit and governance committee. How would we, for example, get involved in, or would we ever get involved in saying, is the supplier, whoever the supplier is on a large scale spend, robust? How would we know that Devon Audit Partnership has cast their eye over? Now, best will in the world, there are many businesses that are robust on the day you look at them, and 6 months later, other things happen, and unfortunately, they go out of business. So I accept the natural sort of rhythm of business, But inevitably, how do we know, for example, that we're doing business with people of good repute and good resource, as opposed to a firm that may have set up in recent times and not have the necessary backing or business confidence? I think you get the point of what I'm looking at. So as a member, when I read these papers, I get very much the inclusion that we are involved in the oversight, in the policy, in the asking questions around that, but not so much asking the question is, do the decision makers have a good grip on the risk of the decisions they're making? So tell me how we get involved in that. Thank you.
It's an extremely good point, Councillor Connett. And I think you're right. Learn from others is a fundamental part of risk management. It's keeping our eyes and ears to the ground and understanding what's happening in the wider world. Just on that point, a few of you will probably recognise me from heading up the risk management team for Devon County Council. We have a very close relationship with the risk colleagues from Torbay Council as well. So I guess what that does is it broadens our experience with regards to risk. Your point is a good one, though, and I guess what we're talking about there is partnership risks, aren't we? So if we partner with a supplier, a company, it's about understanding the risks that they face. And of course, they may have a supplier, and they may have a supplier. So that's that supply chain. And if there's a link, you're only as strong as the sort of weakest link within that chain. So I guess it comes down to the assessment of that risk from first and foremost. And that's continuous, and it changes, doesn't it? So we have to understand what that looks like. Personally, without going into too much detail for members today, I think it has a lot to do with that contract management, so who we're looking at and when. But I think fundamentally it has to do with the relationship we have with that supplier, who's managing that relationship, what direction are they heading in. And so essentially we need to understand, how often we need to assess that risk and who's responsible and accountable for that relationship going forward. So I think that assessment isn't day one and done, it's continuous. What does that relationship look like? Are the risks changing both internally and externally? There could be a number of aspects in the wider world that are happening to perhaps have the ability to impact that risk. But equally, I think it's about continuous improvement on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean.
Thank you, Chair. And Councillor Connett, just to add that the accountable body for the CCA is Devon County Council, and that recognises and reflects the infancy and, if you like, the maturing nature of the CCA, given how old it is now. And so we rely on Devon County Council's procurement processes, the checks that are required to be undertaken on the resilience of suppliers, depending on the value of the contract that is being let. I mean, certainly in the first 6 to 12 months of the CCA, where we would expect to see most significant spend is on the Connect to Work programme, which is a welfare to work programme that will be procured by Devon County Council on behalf of the CCA, and that will include the supply chain resilience checks that you've alluded to being required, and clearly that balance between supporting a local businesses versus and start-up businesses, which is also an objective of the CCA, versus making sure that our suppliers are resilient enough to be able to withstand any changes. So, and as that changes in the sort of months and years ahead, we'll bring back future reports to the committee.
Thank you for that. Just following on from Councillor Connett's question, are there any helpful worked examples of where perhaps in the past we've gone wrong or we've learnt from a difficulty or a challenging situation? I think something along the line of a story like that would help people like myself who are new to this.
Thank you. Probably today isn't the platform for that, but if officers are able to find any examples and forward those to members, just to give us a background and for us to understand where it's gone wrong and what the unpicking process was. Certainly from my perspective, and thank you, Brad, for your presentation. I don't know, anyone else here may be a reader, but I read Private Eye every fortnight, and I certainly, while I'm sitting in this chair or even sitting on this committee, don't want to see the CCA in rotten boroughs, because that would be rather embarrassing. So everything we can do as a committee to keep us on the straight and narrow, we have officers to guide us and support us. And as you say, procurement is a huge exercise, and it's constant vigilance. And there will always be examples where suppliers, even through national procurement frameworks, fall by the wayside. It's happened, it's publicised quite often, We just need to have our plan B and our plan C. One question, Brad, if I might. On page 46, which is your risk identification assessment with your colourful impact versus likelihood grid, just a question. In terms of section 2, risk treatment, you mentioned there about that if the risk is unlikely to cost more than 10k, you wouldn't really want to spend more than 10k on the mitigation. I can understand the concept of that. Obviously, you know, if the risk was likely to cost you 100 million, then the rationale doesn't really apply for that. So what's the mechanism for calculating that? I appreciate it's a fairly blunt tool, but just some sort of background as to how that work is done would be very helpful.
Thank you, Chair, for the question. I think it's an incredibly useful one. I guess the key word here is efficiency and effectiveness. When I'm talking about risk treatment to colleagues and to officers, I guess it's about moving the needle. Okay, so you know, if the risk scores is high, how are we going to move that needle down to medium? So the treatment or the mitigating control has to be effective in relation to that risk. I guess you're right. The point I'm trying to make is the cost of controlling that risk shouldn't outweigh what the risk actually is, because that's ineffective use of resources. I guess it's not a one-size-fits-all here. It depends on what the risk is. It depends on the combined county authorities' appetite for that particular risk, the direction in which we want to travel. We would work alongside officers, senior leadership, yourselves as members, to develop those mitigating tools and controls to move forward. And I guess it's that support and challenge back, you know, holding up that mirror. Is that good enough? Is that going to control the risk to an acceptable level? So sorry, Chair, it's not a straightforward answer, I guess. It really does depend on what the risk is and the development of that risk over time.
Councillor.
Hopefully not a silly question, but risk relates to activity. We're a brand new activity, and perhaps a question more for Sean or Matt. Do we have a sort of timescale for when the CCA is going to start taking responsibility, given money, spending money? Because that's when risk really develops. And I feel slightly, alluding to your question, that, you know, until we're actually doing those things, sometimes it's a bit hard to set up and understand the risk. So is there a time scale, and I imagine it's months, maybe a couple of years, as to when that responsibility and activity takes place? And when do we have to be ready with the risk?
Well, thank you, Chair. I mean, I think for members of the committee, we're going to discuss the work programme for the committee in item 11, but maybe perhaps just to reflect some of those thoughts now. So the key areas of activity for the CCA over the next 12 months will be, from a welfare to work perspective, the commissioning and procurement of Connect to Work, which is a large-scale welfare to work programme that seeks to get 1,900 people a year into employment. As I just alluded to, that would be procured by Devon County Council, and there's a delivery area of Devon, Torbay and Plymouth. We'll be preparing for the CCA to become the local transport authority autonomously from April next year. I think the committee would benefit perhaps from the financial and audit arrangements for that coming to a future committee, and also the preparation for adult skills funding, which has devolved from academic year 26-27 to next September, and that is approximately about £7 million a year of funding that will start to flow through the CCA. We'd expect a lot of infrastructure funding and capital funding to flow through. So our revenue funding is relatively light as a CCA. The CCA is not precepting or revenue raising, so all of its funding will be derived from programmes that it's responsible for. We'd expect several of those programmes to be announced in the Comprehensive Spending Review, which is on Wednesday this week. And then over the next 12 to 18 months, we'll bring forward a work programme that has the milestones and key implementation dates so that the committee can determine its work programme. Thank you, Chair. Oh.
Sorry, just to add to that point as well, we have already had significant funds going through us. So in terms of your point about ramping up, although the 16 million capital fund was awarded before we formally existed, that was part of our very strong considerations around how we manage that, how we manage some of the risks, what the governance arrangements. So picking up on Councillor Connett's point, Councillor Brooks' point previously around considerations, it's formally capturing those on the work that Devon Assurance Partnership help us with, but we are doing a lot of that in the day-to-day activities of the CCA at the moment as well.
Just for clarity, you just said that we will be getting some of this work will be funded by grants we get from government. I thought we were given an amount of money to run all this. Or is it both?
Yep, so we have been awarded some core funding to support the core team, so Sean's time and sort of other officers which form part of the budget considerations. Essentially that was 250,000 in year one, which accounted for 6 or 7 weeks of that year, 500 in year two, which is the current financial year, and 250 next year. Beyond that, we have no yet confirmed funding to support that operation, and that's where Sean sort of alluded to. As we move forward, we've got to make sure that overheads are recovered effectively from various projects, where we've got cash flow support. Some of those interest earning opportunities may fund us into the medium term as well. So very little revenue pot has been confirmed for core support. Everything else is pretty much operational delivery, which we've been talking about this morning.
Do you want to come back on that, Councillor Ledbetter? You don't look convinced.
Well, I mean, it's just early days, isn't it? I mean, we're going to top slice the money effectively to fund this operation.
Councillor Ledbetter, for example, so UK Shared Prosperity Funding, which is a funding pot that the CCA now administers, had a top slice arrangement to it to be able to cover core overheads. It means separately to programme management overhead arrangement recovery, officers are engaged with officials at MHCLG on the future revenue funding arrangements of the CCA, given that we're non-precepting and non-revenue raising. So ourselves and Lancashire's Combined County Authority are in a similar position. Other new Combined County Authorities are mayoral, which we're clearly not, so they have a slightly different funding arrangement that sort of sits behind them. So we'll bring back any information as we can once it's available for committee members' consideration.
In terms of, you mentioned the spending review, would it be possible just for perhaps a short written statement when you've had a chance to sort of unpick what that spending review is, just perhaps a paragraph or two, just with some key points, just to send out to members so we're aware of the repercussions of that? Is that possible? Yeah, thank you. So, members, you've had the report. Thank you very much, Brad, for your time presenting that. So the recommendation is that the Audit and Governance Committee approves the proposed Devon and Torbay Combined County Authority Risk Management Policy and Strategy 2025 to 2030. Do I have a proposer for that from the room? Councillor Brooke, thank you. And seconder? Thank you. I'm going to have to bring my glass. I'm so sorry. Thank you, Councillor Penny. So, all members in favour of that motion? That's unanimous again. Thank you very much indeed. So we now move to agenda item 10, which is the introduction to external audit, and that is to be presented by Peter Barber from Grant Thornton, UK. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, committee. For those of you that don't already know me...
Peter, I'm sorry to cut in. Could you bring the microphone slightly closer to yourself? Thank you.
Chair, is that better? Good morning, just. For those of you that don't already know me, and I see a few familiar faces around the room, my name is Pete Barber. I'm a director with Grant Thornton, and I am your proposed external auditor with effect from 25-26. In terms of the role of external audit, you've already heard today from Internal Audit their plan setting out their approach to 25-26. The role of external audit is different to internal audit, but we do work very closely with internal audit, Tony and the team, to avoid duplication, and we do look to make sure that the roles do complement each other, and we do look to avoid duplication. Essentially, both us and internal audit look to provide you, as the combined authority, officers and wider stakeholders with assurances over the use of public funds. So, in terms of what we do, whilst internal audit is undertaken predominantly during the year in audit, external audit is a retrospective exercise, so we do come in predominantly after the event. You've heard from Matt already today that we've had clarity recently over when external audit will be applicable from, and I think that's really important. So the main role of external audit is to give an opinion on your financial statements. Interestingly, I am the appointed auditor at the West of England Combined Authority, and when they were formed many years ago, they were formed, I think it was on the 28th of March, and they were required by government to produce accounts for 3 days. So as auditors for the Combined Authority up in the West of England, their first year of audit was a 3-day audit. It's very reassuring to know that sense has prevailed, and actually in your case, there will be that 14-month audit. So what we will be doing is looking to give an opinion on your financial statements from the 5th of February 2024 to the 31st of March 2020. Sorry, the 5th of March 2025 to the 31st of March 26. And obviously we will commence the majority of that work once we've received those draft accounts. So signing off your accounts is really important because it provides assurance to stakeholders that public money is being spent appropriately. That those sets of accounts are really important in that they set out clearly the transactions that you've undertaken in the year or the 14-month in question and your balance sheet at the year end. And therefore, having those accounts produced in a timely manner by officers, having them approved and having them signed off by us is really important. And we will be working over the next 12 months with officers to ensure that we have an agreed timetable to do that and to make sure that we meet the national deadlines. And a number of you will be aware that there are a number of councils out there that have struggled in the past to produce complete, accurate and timely accounts. And we want to make sure that in the build-up to that audit, we are working with you to make sure that that is delivered in a timely manner. And that will be the majority of the work that we undertake at the Combined Authority. However, within the public sector, there is a slight nuance in terms of our roles, and we have this additional responsibility. So colleague auditors in the private sector, their sole responsibility will to sign off those accounts, to say they're true and fair, to make sure the financial numbers are correct. They're not interested in what the money's been spent on and where the income's come from. They're not interested in whether that activity was done in an efficient and effective manner. They're purely interested in the numbers and it correctly reflects the position. Within the public sector, it is different, and public sector auditors have a second responsibility, and that's unique to the public sector. And that second role is what we call value for money. So value for money means lots of things to lots of people, but when we come to undertake the value for money role, the secondary role at the Combined Authority, we will be looking at the areas set out in the National Audit Office Code. And they require us to look at 3 areas. So we look at financial sustainability. So we're looking to see how you set a budget, how you monitor it and ensure it's delivered against, if there are variances, how you take corrective action, and how you ensure that your spend remains within that income envelope. And also, importantly, not just how you set a budget for any one financial year, but how you're planning into the medium term. So medium-term financial planning is critically important, and I dare I say, more important at a combined authority than lots of councils, because a lot of your activity is capital-based, and it covers multiple years and requires forward thinking in terms of implementation and timelines. And one of the big issues across the public sector is delivery in a timely manner. So the medium-term financial planning and linking that with your programme management is really important. So that will be an area that will be particularly interested, particularly in year 1, because it's often difficult to set a budget in year 1. So that's the main area, I would say, in terms of value for money. But there's 2 other areas that we're required to look at. The second one is governance. And clearly this role, the Audit and Governance Committee here, you are those charged with governance. So you have a particular role within this organisation to get assurance and obtain assurances from officers, from people like internal audit, from ourselves, that decisions are being taken based on complete, accurate and timely information, the risk is being managed, that internal controls are in place. You get that from internal audit and you get it from us as well. And you need to be holding officers to account. You need to be asking the questions to make sure that you are happy that governance is effective. And we look at that as well. And then the third area that we look at as part of value for money is economy, efficiency and effectiveness. And it's quite a broad area, that, and we'll be selective and we'll be risk-based. But this is about how you spend that money that you're given, how do you utilise it, and how do you lever in additional funding to facilitate your aspirations and your objectives. Do you have a clear work plan? Do you monitor against it? Do you have key performance indicators? How does your performance management approach work? How are decisions taken? The risk within a lot of public sector bodies is that some decisions become overtly bureaucratic, or if you're levering in services from third parties, that some of the decisions fall between the gaps and one party thinks the others are making those decisions. So the challenge once again is to make sure those decision-making process is efficient but not overtly bureaucratic, and we'll be interested to see how that evolves within the combined authority. So those are the two main roles. As I said, with the accounts, for the year in question, or for the 14 months in question, you will be required to produce your accounts for within 3 months of the year end. So year end being the 31st of March 2026, we would be expecting to get a set of accounts by the end of June, and then we would look to undertake that opinion work in the next 3 or 4 months after that date. So you'd have hopefully the opinion at that point in time, and we would do the value for money work that I've just outlined in a bit of detail along similar lines, and be aiming to report that at the same time. Now, interestingly, as you are part of the public sector audit appointments regime, there is additional potential areas of work that we can get involved in, and I think it was alluded to earlier in terms of learning from what's happened, and I think the solar panels example was given earlier. So there are wider powers available to us as external auditors, and these are reserved for cases where there are significant concerns about arrangements at an individual audited body. They're not common, but they are becoming more frequent. If I was to look at them, most of them are around financial challenges. So you will be aware of a lot of councils that have or are potentially going to issue what they call a Section 114 notice to indicate that they're bankrupt. We're finding more and more of those. And often when we look at those, whilst absolutely austerity has a major impact, it's not the only reason, and often there are issues around decision-making and poor decision-making that have led to that financial position. So we're seeing those, and in those cases, as auditors, we can issue public interest reports if we think the council or the admitted body is not taking it seriously. We can look to apply to a court for an item of account to be contrary to law. There's a number of things we can do. We can issue statutory recommendations, and as I said, those are happening more frequently. And as alluded to earlier in the discussion, we don't really want the combined authority to be in that position. They're not exclusively financially based. There are a number of governance examples as well where there has been disagreements between officers and members. There's been clearly poor decision making from a governance point of view with no accountability, and that often results in similar scenarios. And interestingly, the reason why we are able to issue those wider powers is because within local government, an element of the spending within local government and councils is funded from local taxation. So your council tax and the business rates. Because councils are receiving money in from local people and from local businesses, that gives a right of a resident to raise questions of a council and the auditor about the accounts. We've just talked earlier that the combined authority will not be precepting on any councils at the moment, so it won't be receiving any money directly from local taxation at the moment, but because you are part of the wider regime, that opportunity for members of the public to ask questions of you, once you produce your accounts, and in turn me, will still exist for this combined authority. So there is that added nuance in terms of that right of a resident to ask questions of you and question how you are spending public funds. So that is really just a very brief canter through the role of external audit. As I said, I will be the appointed auditor with effect from 25-26. The wider team will be confirmed in due course. And I suppose to help the process for me slightly, in addition to me having the West of England Combined Authority as one of my audits, I'm also the appointed auditor at Devon County Council. So I have that wider connection as well, which will be important going forward. So, Chair, I'll stop there. That's a brief canter through, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. One arises in terms of there is no perceived conflict of the same person acting for both authorities? No? That circle's been cleared, yeah?
Yes, Chair. So the appointment of Grant Thornton as the external auditors was initiated by Public Sector Audit Appointments, and absolutely it is often the case that an appointed auditor is covering multiple organisations within a geographical area. Just to reassure committee members, there is absolutely those Chinese walls in place, and there is absolute focus on confidentiality within that structure to make sure that we are, because as auditors we are allowed access to anything we need to see to inform our judgments. So that confidentiality is absolutely maintained, but at the same time we want to avoid duplication, and we want to make sure that that cumulative knowledge is not lost and we're not asking the same questions twice.
Thank you. I think all the members who currently serve on audit committees here are well aware of the pickle that the sector has got itself into, and some of that, the fault lies elsewhere. And I suppose the key is that officers and the directorate keep the committee constantly informed of any slippage of timings, and that the members here have the confidence and the strength of character to ask those questions and understand that it's not a dig at officers, not a critique. It's our job is to ask those questions in a robust way and to get the answers. And if we don't get the answers we're after, we ask them a different way, and we keep asking till we get the answer we need. Because none of us want to appear on the pages of a certain magazine either. Are there any questions, observations? Please.
Just an observation, because one of the elements for the value for money is financial sustainability. Well, we've just heard that we've only got core support for 3 years. How do you square that circle?
Well, this is a perennial issue within local government, because all auditors and councils for that matter know that it's important to plan into the medium term and don't take short-term decisions, yet the funding regime in which they operate, and the chair's alluded to it about, where we're not in the game of blaming any particular element of government, but clearly councils have that perennial problem that they are often getting annual settlements but recognise that they need to be planning into the medium term and making decisions that affect multiple years, because ultimately, if you're going to be an effective organisation, you have to often spend money in earlier years to bring about service improvements and efficiencies in latter years, and therefore you need to have that security. So all you can do is plan based on what information you know. You won't be criticised if you are making decisions based on complete inaccurate information that's available at the time. Now you can push to make sure you've got as much information to make those decisions on as possible, but ultimately we will be judging you on what you've got and what's available and what decisions you've made. So if you have limited information and you have uncertainty around funding, then you're into the territory of different scenarios and what you would do in different cases, so that you can actually implement particular courses of action should one scenario arise as opposed to another. I think I'd probably digress slightly, but I mean it comes back with the risk stuff as well, because many years ago councils were encouraged to be risk averse. And dare I say that was because there was lots of money around and they didn't need to be as efficient as they need to be. That's long gone now, and with austerity, councils can no longer afford, and combined authorities neither, can't afford to be risk averse. You need to be risk aware. You need to take informed risk that has the best opportunity to deliver the best outcomes for the organisation, and that equally applies in terms of, but then you've got to look at the scenarios and what you will do in any one situation should it materialise.
Thank you. Just before I come to Councillor Ledbetter, again, I mean, I think a lot of us here share common themes. We've all sat on various committees, and our own individual authorities will have been through this, and you raise a valid point that we have to make, or those people that make decisions have to do them with the best to their ability, with the knowledge they have, and within the timescale set. And all of our authorities have received national funding from previous government and now this government. And I found that it's money promised. So you start the plans to start planning it, how you're going to dole it out and set up all the committees. And then the money doesn't arrive till perhaps November, in some cases, I recall December. But the deadline to spend it is still March. And then you know, you have this almost acting like the Beverly Hillbillies to try and get the money out, do as much good as we can within our communities and within our own areas. But there's always that thought at the back of your mind that actually you're just rushing through just to get a shot of it, and the public perception is often very poor. And as coming back to Councillor Connett's point, if you then invest or spend in an area that then ultimately it backfires, then there's, I suppose, that knowledge that you will assess it based on that there was an audit trail, there were proper meetings, it was evidence considered, and that's all we can do. And the same applies for the CCA, I guess. So thank you for your time. I'll come to Councillor Ledbetter, and then Sean, I think you want to come in.
A very, very quick question, something you mentioned. Does the legislation allow for combined authority to set a precept? You mentioned it.
Councillor, so no, it doesn't, not as it's presently prescribed. So, if I may, Chair, the four, just for clarity for members, to Councillor Morgan's point as well, so the four areas where the CCA is funded, how the CCA is funded today, is the capacity grant that the Chief Finance Officer has referred to. So that's the £1 million from MHCLG up until the end of financial year 26-27. So that takes us to April 2027. Officers are engaged with a discussion with CLG officials on revenue funding beyond that point. This is an important point that you've raised. Secondly is, as we've referred to, is the management fees or overhead recovery from the programmes that we're responsible for. Thirdly is, as we've alluded to, we're expecting significant capital sums through the CCA, of which there'll be interesting and opportunities which providers, and given the relatively small scale of the core operating costs, that actually makes a significant contribution to the revenue operating costs of the CCA. And then fourthly, and we haven't yet done this or yet forecast to, the upper tier constituent authorities of Devon County Council and Torbay Council, operating costs would then fall to both of those upper tier authorities in the legislation, although we're clearly seeking ways to minimise the impact of that given the financial position of both upper tier authorities. So there's a circular discussion, but I just thought it'd be helpful just to explain the four sources of funding.
I'll just come back very quickly. So what is the core operating cost of this organisation?
Sorry, Andrew. We are within budget when you apply the interest earning opportunities across that. So we're forecasting £1 million over that, essentially that 3-year period from it. There is a paper, and I'll circulate it to you separately around the budget, which I don't have to hand, unfortunately, today.
What I asked was how much does it cost per annum to run this show?
So I think, presently we're around £600,000 to £700,000 a year is our cost at the moment. But that's for the full year effect of this year, clearly only for the 2 operating period for the first 2 months and then the following year 3.
And sorry, that would be more than just officer cost as well. So that's external audit fees and charges, that's insurances, that's IT type stuff, so all of the core elements you'd expect. But I'll make sure that if it's helpful, I can circulate the budget paper to the committee, to be honest.
I think it would be very helpful, the fact the question has been asked, if all members can see that document,
certainly.
just so we understand where the money's come in, where it's going out, and then we can assess it from there and ask any further questions. And thank you, Councillor Ledbetter, for raising that. Are there any further questions for Peter on the role of Grant Thornton? If not, thank you very much indeed for your time. We don't have to vote on this, it's just to note the report. Thank you. And we now move on to item 11, which is the final item on the agenda, the work programme, to consider items for this work programme 2025 to 26. Sure.
So thank you very much, Chair. Members, as we've been working through the committee today, we've been identifying, I think, items that you want to bring back for consideration to future committees. So there will be standing items, for example, the budget monitoring activity, the work of the Devon Assurance Partnership in relation to the risk management framework and the risk register for the CCA. I think members would benefit from the programmes and the risks that sit behind the programmes that the CCA will be responsible for. In the summer of next year, there will be the annual accounts sign-off, any internal audit reviews and reporting back to members as and when they occur. And if I could suggest to members, the development of the performance framework and KPIs, we'll bring that back to a future committee, and then the approach to procurement. So if there's any other items that members wanted to bring forward, but hopefully we've captured the vast majority of what you would like to have at future committees. Thank you, Chair.
Again, if members want to suggest things now, but perhaps if you have any ideas, you can forward those through to officers out with of the meeting. Alan.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm grateful to the Chief Officer for his suggestions, because we can't know what we don't know at the moment. So I think this would be a useful agenda item for every one of our meetings, at least for the next year, 18 months. So as things come to mind, we might add to them. I think this is a learning journey for all of us, so I wouldn't want to miss the opportunity to add things on as we see them to be relevant. Thank you.
Oh, no. Well, I think that's, I mean, I have no problem with that, being the chair, having that as a standing item until such point that we think it can be sort of filtered down or done less often. But certainly the ability in the meeting outside to do it would be great. Thank you. So I think that draws that item to a close. Thank you very much. We'll look forward to receiving the work programme through from the Directorate. And that then just takes us to item 12. The date of the next meeting has been scheduled for Monday, the 8th of September 2025. Just thinking, I will be back then, so you're off the hook, Councillor Hill.
And will that be in Torbay?
At County Hall. So that next meeting is at County Hall for your diaries. But officers will send out, obviously, papers beforehand and just let you know. So all that remains then is to thank everyone for attending today for this inaugural meeting. It's been a pleasure. And I think we've got a lot of work ahead of us, but it should be quite enjoyable. And thank you all for your time. Have a safe journey back to wherever you're travelling today. Thank you to anyone watching. I don't know if we keep stats on it. Perhaps not as popular as something else on TV. And thank you all very much indeed. Thank you, officers, for preparing. And I call this meeting to a close. Thank you.